All right, what's happening out there, my mathletes? That's right, Mr. Muscarella coming at you. And in this video, we're going to take a look at solving quadratic equations. A little review here. And we're going to do this method called solving by factoring. But when we do this, the a value is going to be 1. So that means number in front of the x squared term or the quadratic term, that's going to have a value of 1. So that's going to be a real important thing when we take a look at this. So standard form, that's going to be a very, very important thing. So you want to make sure that you get the function into standard form. And if you forget what standard form is, remember that's going to be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that a value, whatever that number is in front of x squared, in this case, it's always going to be 1. So that coefficient is 1. So let's take a look at our very first example. So we want to get everything over onto the left side with our a squared term, because our a squared term is positive. So when we do that, we'll get a squared plus 3a, and then minus 10 equals 0. So that's going to give me my equation in standard form. Now from here, when we break this up into our two little binomials here, when we take a look at this, what we want to do is kind of think of a couple of things. Now a squared, that very first term, can only be factored into a and a. So nothing to really think about there. That's all we got to do. Now here's the thing. When we look at this last term, so right here at this very last term, that's negative. So that means when I do my factoring, one term is going to be positive and the other term is going to be negative. So one's going to be plus, one's going to be minus. Now I need two numbers. When I multiply them, I get 10. That is negative, a negative 10. But when I add them, I get a positive 3. So one way to think about this, I call it the foci method. So factors of, in this case, negative 10. Sum is, I want the sum to be 3. So factors of, so that's the c value. And then the sum is, that's the b value. So when you think about that, we want to just think about numbers that can multiply to give me negative 10. So I could have negative 1 and 10. I could have positive 1, negative 10. I could also have 5 and negative 2, or I could have negative 5 and positive 2. So like those are all my possibilities were my factors of negative 10. Now I want the one that has a sum of 3. So the sum has got to be positive 3, whatever that b term is. And if I add up the first two, negative 1 and 10, that gives me a sum of 9. So nope, that's not it. 1 and negative 10, well, that gives me negative 9. Well, that's not it either. So that's out. And if I do 5 and negative 2, that's 3. Ooh, winner, winner, chicken dinner. So that's what we would end up with. Now, if we did our negative 5 and 2, when we add that, we get negative 3. So that's a clue that my signs, in this case, my signs would have to get reversed. So the 5 is going to be the positive one, and the 2 will be the negative factor. So we'll have a plus 5, a minus 2. So those are going to be my two factors of that binomial. Now, notice the equal signs lined up, nice, neat, one line, one step. From here, we're going to write each binomial and set that binomial equal to 0. So a plus 5 equals 0, and a minus 2 equals 0. When you solve that, each one of those, you'll get a has a value of negative 5, and a also has a value of 2. So these are the two values that would solve the quadratic equation. A squared equals 10 minus 3a. Those two values would be negative 5 and 2. Now let's go ahead and take a look at number 2. Number 2 is one that presents a little bit of trickiness to a lot of people. First, you'd move that 5n over, no big deal. So you'd get n squared minus 5n equals 0. Now there's no c term here. And this presents an issue for a lot of students. But there is a common factor of n. So you're going to take out an n, and then you're going to have n minus 5 equals 0. Because if you were to distribute the n out in front, that would result in the quadratic that is right above it. N times n is n squared. N times minus 5 gives you negative 5n. So you'd have that piece right there. Now, when you go through and solve this, so this guy right here, this very first factor, that one is just going to be n equals 0. Now, my other factor, we'd write n minus 5 equals 0, and you would end up with n equals 5. So when you do these, so say this were a quiz, that you were doing in my class, you would get 1 point, you got to rearrange everything. So you get 1 point for coming up with the correct factors and 1 point for getting the two correct answers. All right, so 1 point for the factoring and 1 point for the answers. And that's it. So here's another one. So try this one on your own. Go ahead, hit pause, and let's see what you come up with on this one. Keeping everything nice, neat, and tight. Keep those equal signs lined up, and let's go. Let's see how we do. So hit pause, and I'll see you in a moment. All right, how did we do, boys and girls? That's right, let's check it out. So we've got c squared plus c minus 30 equals 0. Now, common mistake here, be careful, don't drop the equals 0, please, because then it's not an equation anymore. So if you were to just write this, and you take away this equals 0, then you lose a point, because now you have an expression. And you can't solve expressions, no can do. You can only solve equations. So make sure you keep that equals 0 there. If you drop that, you will be dinged a point for notation. And then we factor that into c plus 6 and c minus 5, get that equal to 0, and you end up with the two values of c being negative 6 and 5. And you can see from my little foci chart there, factors of negative 30, and sum is going to be 1 because the b value is positive 1. So the only combination of factors that works is positive 6 and negative 5. So I'll use those two values for my factors and then solve accordingly. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure you come back and check out the next one when the a value is not 1. All right, thank you guys for watching, man. I'll catch you later. Peace.